Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. As many of you know who followed the podcast, one of my favorite genres is Parker Publishing. And there was a very specific sort of book that was written in the 60s and 70s that was unique among all other spiritual literature. And they sort of created different words and languages. It had a certain marketing style. It gave examples in a certain way. Anthony Norvell is very classic for using this style. Even Joseph Murphy in some of his later books utilized this particular style. If you check out my episode where I discuss Walter Delaney and ultrapsychonics, it is also very similar. In fact, many of the books that were published by Parker Publishing were by actual very good authors that used anonymous names that wanted to write very exciting and dynamic spiritual literature, sometimes delving into magic rituals and a variety of things. One of the most interesting cases is Robert A. Ferguson. If you were to look up a Google search on Robert A. Ferguson, you would simply find a very famous professor who wrote political books and legal books and was well renowned as being that classic scholarly author. He taught law, and you can see how he sort of separated his earlier writings from later. But earlier in his career, he was known as this amazing spiritual teacher. On the back of the book that I'm going to read from, Robert A. Ferguson, author, lecturer, and psychic telemetry teacher, has been involved in the occult field for over 30 years. He's been a frequent guest on many television talk shows and has had articles published in magazines such as National Enquirer, Occult, Psychic World, and others. Mr. Ferguson has been called the leading authority in the field by a number of prestigious societies in England. He has also acted as psychic consultant to top American corporations and entertainment personalities. Why don't we hear about this person later on? When his obituary is written, none of his writings are mentioned, but of the Parker Publishing books, his were the most dynamic and interesting, in some ways kind of crazy. He has a book on the law of cycles that's truly amazing and has very specific cycles that you can break down. I've considered reading some of the techniques that are described there, but it may not transfer over into a podcast like this. He has written several books, one on universal mind, and it is very specific and scholarly in a unique way that we can't find in other books. He is famous for a book called Inferno, An Anatomy of American Punishment, where he talks about the American criminal justice system in an incredibly well-documented scholarly book that is taught in classes in Harvard. So he wrote a book called Psychic Telemetry, which is very fascinating because it has some great affirmations in it. And like these other books, it introduces something new. And that was always the appealing thing. A new word or language is created for talking about what we regularly talk about. In this book, he calls it Psychic Telemetry. And I want to read about some of the affirmations and initiation rituals that Robert A. Ferguson recommends in teaching psychic telemetry power. Ferguson begins this book by saying, "Is there something in your life that needs changing for the better? Do you need more money? Are you seeking true love and romance? Do you wonder about what your purpose in life is? Are you growing old too quickly? Are you suffering from poor health? Do you have talents that go unnoticed by others? Do you want to know what the future holds and be able to change it? You no longer need to feel the frustration of wishes unfulfilled. This book will change your life as no other book before it. Long before you reach the end of this book, you will be changing your life for the better. The more I became exposed to the unnecessary frustration many people experience in learning personal psychic development, the stronger became my desire to make a common sense personal development book available to you. There are literally hundreds of case histories that I could cite in the introduction of this book. I become so excited over the success of my friends and students that have used psychic telemetry that my thoughts trip over one another as I attempt to write of only a few of the miracles that have changed so many lives, miracles that will change your life as well. Plain Jane laid down her mop and broom to become a fashion model. Ham indeed didn't have a chance to win a political office, and yet he was elected county supervisor. When Albert V. thought his love life was a thing of the past, he found the perfect marriage partner. Unhappy Sally turned the tables on her evil tormentors and became, in her words, the happiest girl in the world. Bob F. thought his Mexican vacation was a disaster. He was far from home and out of money. He bet his last $2 at the dog racing track. He walked away with $576. Psychic telemetry power is real. I make no false nor unfounded claims of psychic telemetry power. I don't have to. Psychic telemetry is real, and it proves itself miracle after miracle. I have personally taught hundreds of people how to use psychic telemetry power to bring health, wealth, and happiness into their lives. At other times, I have taught psychic telemetry over television with equal success. I've taken those very same psychic lessons that have proved so successful for others and compiled them into this easy-to-use and easy-to-understand book. Many of my students have suggested that I title this book of instruction The Miracle Book. I do teach you to perform miracles long before you have completed Psychic Telemetry's first chapter. Miracles will be happening to you every day. Psychic Telemetry power is real. Thousands of people are using its power at this very moment, and you, too, should be one of those miracle workers. Do you want to go from poverty to riches? Do you want to experience a miraculous healing? You can, and you will. Psychic telemetry never fails the honest seeker. How Dave E. wished $2,000 into his life overnight. Dave E. of Denver, Colorado was ready to begin his first year at the university when he attended his first psychic telemetry class. I haven't been able to find a job this summer, Dave told the psychic telemetry group. I only have 3 days left before I have to pay my first year's tuition at the university, and I don't have a cent. Dave's world appeared bleak and hopeless. It looked like his dream was going to turn into a nightmare. But that was before Dave knew how to use his psychic telemetry power. Before the psychic telemetry class adjourned for the evening, Dave was shown how to perform the psychic telemetry prosperity ritual. Dave was the first one to class the next evening. His face was wreathed in smiles. This probably won't surprise you, but I've just received $2,000, more than enough to pay for my tuition. A miracle? Not really. Just a very average example of the power of psychic telemetry to change the course of events to your favor. Dave had performed his prosperity ritual at about 9 p.m. At 8 a.m. the following morning, Dave's telephone rang. It was Maurice. Maurice M. was a successful corporation executive and an old friend of Dave's deceased father. Dave, this is Maurice. The voice boomed over the telephone. I just felt like I had to call you. Years ago, I promised your father that I would see to it that you would go to college. Are you short of tuition money? Dave hesitated before he admitted that. Yes, he was short of money. I need $1,200, he told Maurice. I'll send you $2,000 right now, and you can expect more in the future, Maurice said. Thanks to Psychic Telemetry's prosperity enchantments, Dave E. is now a well-known, prosperous criminal attorney. Everyone has psychic telemetry power. It's true. Everyone does have psychic telemetry power. But it's equally true that very few people use this magical power. Maybe one person in 1,000. There are many reasons for the reluctance of these people to delve into the occult. Most of the objections are downright silly, based upon superstitions from the ignorant past. There's only one difference between a successful, happy person and an unhappy, frustrated person. The successful person uses occult principles, either consciously or unconsciously. Unsuccessful people do not use psychic telemetry power, either because they fear it or they have not been fortunate enough to learn of its miraculous powers. Psychic telemetry is not a new or mysterious power. What awesome power did the saints and sages of the ancient races of man possess? To what power do we attribute the miracles of the alchemist and the prophets of the Middle Ages? It was psychic telemetry, the very power that I will teach you to use in this book. The wise men of these ages past wrote their secrets in a manner to confuse the layman. Much of what they wrote and the tools they required to perform their miracles were unnecessary. This was written in a simple and easy-to-follow method There is no guessing and no false starts. I have stripped the unnecessary mumbo-jumbo from the enchantments and rituals to present you with a clear and concise method of performing realistic miracles. How a California policewoman used psychic telemetry to apprehend criminals and gained a promotion. Fern H. knew that she would have a tough job ahead when she entered the police academy. Fern relished the thought of law enforcement, but she knew that she would prove herself to her male peers, and she did. Fern's first assignment was in the apprehension of shoplifters. Not a very challenging assignment, she said. Using psychic telemetry techniques, Fern herself had soon arrested more shoplifters than an entire team of detectives combined. But Fern still dreamed of a more active assignment. Fern performed a psychic telemetry ritual and saw an attempted bank robbery days before it happened. Fern was ready. Fully informed of the coming robbery, Fern stationed herself inside the bank doors. Single-handedly, she disarmed and arrested the would-be robber. Fern has received many citations for bravery since those days. She is now one of the top female law enforcement officials in the world. I use psychic telemetry every day in my work, she wrote. If it wasn't for my psychic powers, I would be sitting at a police desk answering the telephone. I have hundreds of letters from people, just like Fern, letters from people who are prosperous and successful thanks to psychic telemetry. Your wish can become a positive reality. There is no need to feel frustrated. Psychic telemetry can give you health, wealth, and happiness. Psychic telemetry wishes are not unrealistic hopes. They are positive commands, and what you command does happen. You can count positively on tangible results from your psychic desires. Psychic telemetry can turn your world away from poverty, ill health, and loneliness, and replace them with wealth, health, and all the love that you can handle. How Toru N's crippling arthritis disappeared overnight. Toru N was a prosperous and happy Japanese businessman. He had everything in the world that he had ever wanted except freedom from pain. Toru was wealthy. He and his wife had traveled to every continent on the globe without effort. Toru's business made more money than he could ever have hoped to spend. Suddenly and without warning, Toru was crippled by painful and incurable arthritis. His wealth meant nothing. Toru was heard to say, "I would give every yen I have if I could be relieved of my terrible pain." Luckily, a psychic telemetry student in Australia heard of Toru's plight and flew to Osaka, Japan. The psychic telemetry student met with Toru and his family. Together they performed psychic metatelemetry rituals. Toru later wrote, "I didn't have much confidence in the healing rituals, but I was willing to try anything. I knew that if I didn't receive relief from my arthritis soon, that I would commit suicide. I didn't sleep much the night of the healing rituals. I kept feeling a warm sensation running up and down my arms, legs, and spine. Towards dawn, I drifted off to sleep. I'd had little sleep during my painful affliction, and when I was still sleeping in the early afternoon, my wife became concerned and shook me awake. I had been sleeping as soundly as a baby. I felt wonderful. I couldn't believe that I was awake. I must be dreaming. I said to my wife, my arthritis is cured. I jumped from my bed and ran, shouting about the house, a miracle, a miracle. I'd been bedridden for 1 full year and had spent thousands of yen on medical doctors. It took but 1 hour of psychic telemetry's powerful healing rituals to cure what had defied the most competent men of medical science. Philip, the Australian healer, returned to his home content that he had been able to remove Toru's chronic affliction. He was later happily surprised to learn that the grateful Toru had set up a generous trust fund in his name. Philip will never have to work at a job for as long as he lives. The true case history is not exceptional, nor is it a miracle. It is an example of the positive results that you can expect from all of your psychic telemetry rituals. You can do this exact same thing, and even more. Your psychic telemetry power is anxious to go to work. Your ever-present psychic power has been laying dormant below the surface of your conscious mind, but it has now been activated. You have been doing more than just reading the words from the pages of this psychic telemetry introduction. You've been opening your mind and allowing your innate psychic power to flow to the surface of your consciousness. It wants to go to work. It's anxious to perform miracles, not only for you, but for your family and friends as well. I make no claims that when you finish this book that a psychic veil will be lifted. I make the claim that there is no psychic veil to be lifted. I make the claim that you have the great psychic power before you read this book. Psychic telemetry was written especially for you. Psychic telemetry is a sturdy guide that directs you in the proper use of rituals, enchantments, and healing secrets so that your every wish may come true. Spend a few minutes each day recalling some of the words from this book and its many valuable chapters, and you will become anything you want to be and have anything that you want to have. Psychic telemetry has reaped miracles for others just as it can for you. Life appears to be so very complicated. It often seems that your entire existence is one of overcoming obstacles. You overcome one obstacle, and sure enough, there's another one to conquer. Indeed, you spend so much time fighting the fires that continually appear in your life that you have little time available to devote to realizing the real you. The real you that pleads for health, fame, achievement, wealth, and love. But this need not continue, and it shouldn't continue. Right now, at this very moment, you have the power to change your life from one of poverty to riches, to change a lonely life to one of love. Any of these things can be yours, and they will be yours before you have completed the last chapter of this book. Psychic Telemetry has been written especially for you, and I sincerely believe that you will find it to be the most important book that you have ever read. Look at this natural occurrence. Bob, I had to tell you what happened to me. A voice on the telephone blurted out. I was driving to Las Vegas. I was just going over a rise in the road when I heard a voice scream, "Stop the car!" I applied the brakes as quickly as possible and finally came to a stop. Just as I went over the crest of the hill, my God, it was terrible. A semi-diesel truck had overturned, blocking the road. There were a dozen cars piled up in the accident. There was no way that I could have avoided hitting the cars strewn all over the highway. That voice saved my life. It's a very simple example of helpful psychic telemetry. As the chapters of this book unfold, you will explore hundreds of practical methods of harnessing this great realm of the unknown. But is this psychic realm really so unknown to you? You've already experienced simple psychic telemetry. Ever had a hunch? Did you ever experience woman's intuition? Did you ever sense someone staring at the back of your head? Where did your last ideal come from? These are all expressions of the great cosmic mind. The same cosmic mind that gave you your hunch or a novel idea is the same cosmic mind that gave struggling inventors the inspiration that has led to brilliant inventions which have revolutionized the world. The cosmic mind has taken a penniless drifter and made him a millionaire, and raised the crippled and afflicted from their beds so they might walk. These are not miracles. They are simple expressions of the power of psychic telemetry. You possess these same powers of psychic telemetry at this very moment. Then why aren't you performing miracles? Simply because you have not learned how to use these miracles that are standing quietly at your side, ready to go into action at a moment's notice. In reality, a miracle a day is nothing unusual, as you will soon discover for yourself. The great mystics vanished, but their powers survive. Psychic telemetry is not new. Its knowledge is old and was practiced for thousands of years in the ancient past. The mystics of old used their powers to heal the sick and enrich the poor. They brought hope. They even brought food and gold to the starving masses. They could bring rain to drought-plagued crops. They brought love mates to their friends and to their families. Legend now portrays these mystics as gods, where in reality they were ordinary men and women just like you. They merely had the knowledge to perform effortless miracles at any time of their choosing, and they performed thousands of miracles. The mystics jealously guarded their secrets lest the kings, princes, and potentates of their day discover the mystic power to use for further degrading mankind to an eternal state of serfdom and slavery. As the Middle Ages dawned upon the horizon of mankind's evolution, the mystic resisted the political and religious persecution that befell him. Some mystics used their magical powers to transport themselves to other countries of the earth, where a semblance of these ancient teachings still survive. Other mystics chose the life of the hermit, withdrawing alone to caves and mountaintops where they could find peace to practice their magical powers. Occasionally, a weary stranger would stumble into the mystic's camp to learn the magical powers of the masters. These disciples would sometimes remain with the holy hermits for a century or more, performing their good for mankind, but never rejoining it. There were other mystics during the dark time of the Middle Ages who chose not to flee, but to remain among the poor and sick, whom they had learned to love. withstanding torture and dying upon the racks. These wise men died bravely, refusing to reveal their magical secrets to the ruler, who would use the power for evil instead of good. Though the great mystics were now dead, bits and pieces of their knowledge survived. Sorcerers, witches, and alchemists stumbled upon portions of ancient wisdom, and with these small bits of knowledge were able to perform wondrous feats. But their attempts at duplicating the miracles of the ancient mystics were amateurish in comparison to the remarkable achievements of their predecessors. Many of the ancient teachings were lost through the trial and error methods of the sorcerers and witch. They introduced ridiculous special effects, ranging from the wearing of black robes to howling at the moon like a forlorn coyote on the prairie. Of all the special psychic and occult tools introduced over the centuries, none were successful in turning on the magical powers of the ancient mystics. The real key to power escaped their grasp. The key that they could not find was the shattering power of the mind. With the power of the mind, you can now perform the miracles of ages past, using as your psychic tools the same secret pillars of power that were known only to the last of the great mystics who were executed during the Middle Ages. It is my honest belief that no book before Psychic Telemetry, which you would now hold in your hand, has ever revealed the total secrets held within the pillars of power. The pillars of power have been rediscovered. The half-successful magical efforts of the more recent wizards, sorcerers, witches, and psychics is because they have discovered only half of the magical power that is required before real miracles can be performed. The magical key to the pillars of power is so obvious that possibly it was overlooked by the wizards because of its simplicity. They searched far and wide. Many traveled around the world to discover the secrets that are about to be revealed to you. Searching, delving, and studying, they looked so hard for the magical secrets that they neglected to realize that they already had one of the pillars of power at their fingertips. They only needed to use the power of their own mind and make it explode into action. Intuition, your psychic legacy from ages past. The first great pillar of power, your intuition or instinct, the great cosmic mind determined that man at his creation would possess the power of a god, the power to subvert all things to his will. Man was not created and then left to drift and fend for himself as best he could. If that had been the case, man would have immediately been destroyed by the hostile forces of nature that surrounded him on every side. A powerful force for self-protection and for the performing of miracles was, and is, given to every man and woman born on this planet. A quick glimpse back to the primitive existence of the newly created earth reveals to us the animal whose only means of survival was reliance upon the instinct given it by the cosmic mind. The ancient animal knew when to migrate to warmer climes as the changing seasons approached. The animal could by instinct find water for its survival. It could sense approaching danger. This vital instinct was necessary for its survival in what was a dangerous and troubled world, and man was not neglected in this great scheme of creation. In the evolutionary cycle of creation, prehistoric man was not gifted with a level of intelligence that could ensure his survival through logical and deductive reasoning. Man could develop the power of the intellect through his own resources, but the power of intuition could only be given by the Creator. Ancient man did develop his intellect, and as his intellect increased, he relied less and less upon his instinct for survival. Man first used the club, then the axe, the bow, and the rifle as a means of protection and for tools to be used in the gathering of food. As these means of self-protection became more sophisticated, he erroneously believed that he no longer required reliance upon instinct. Ultimately, a conflict arose between man's rational mind and his instinctive mind. In haste, he chose to accept as complete reality only those things that he could touch, taste, see, etc. He chose to ignore those things which could be instinctively sensed. Our forebears chose not to use their intuitive power, but it was by no means lost. The great power of intuition could not be lost or destroyed by our ancestors because it is the automatic birthright of every man and woman. It is your birthright. Intuition lies bubbling below the surface of your subconscious mind, ready to burst into action. And I'm going to show you how to unleash this first pillar of power. The miracles that you can and will perform will leave you awestruck. How to unlock the mighty force of your first pillar of power. The first step unlocking the force of your first pillar of power is to become as relaxed as possible. It is your choice whether this brief method of relaxation should be in a standing, sitting, or prone position. Now that you are relaxed in a comfortable position, close your eyes tightly. With eyes closed, visualizing a flaming pillar of light in front of you and to the right. Watch this pillar closely. It is your first pillar of power. Now, repeat this positive declaration. I am now relaxed, and my eyes have shut out the cares of the world. I now command that my subconscious mind be activated. My subconscious mind now opens to me and reveals its magical secrets. Remain relaxed. You'll be pleasantly surprised at the wonders that will now pour into your conscious mind. Alex R. clung to a worthless parcel of Texas prairie. Oil was discovered. This true case history was brought to my attention as I sat writing the pages of this chapter. A few years ago, Alex R. and his family owned worthless prairie land in southern Texas. The family was very, very poor. Though they owned hundreds of acres of land, they could neither afford the equipment necessary to farm the land, nor could they purchase cattle to graze upon it. The family fortune declined even further. It was necessary to put the land up for sale, but let Alex tell his own story. I remember at the time all of this happened, I didn't know anything about the pillars of power or psychic telemetry. Anyway, we had reached the point that my family only had a few garden vegetables to eat, and these were eaten at our one meal a day. The smaller children had become lazy and listless from the very poor diet, which we barely managed to survive upon. Dad decided that he had to sell our land and move the family into town. A large cattle rancher whose land bordered ours made Dad a fair offer on the property, and Dad decided to accept the offer. When the day arrived to sign the final papers of the sale, I awoke with a feeling that I had never experienced before. I knew that we had to hang on to the land, but I didn't know why. My pleas to my father fell upon deaf ears. In the first place, there is no way we can afford to keep the land, he told me. In the second place, I think your instinct is crazy. I begged, argued, and pleaded that we keep the land. I became so distraught in my urgings that my father finally agreed to deed 40 acres to me on one condition. The condition was that I must go to work at a full-time job to pay for the land. Getting a job at 16 wasn't easy, and it took 9 years to pay for that land. During those 9 years, I still had no idea as to why I had to keep that land. I kept telling myself that I was a damned fool, but even thinking of selling the land caused deep shudders. My instinct would tell me over and over again to hang on. A couple of years ago, I became interested in psychic telemetry and decided to perform the ritual of the first pillar of power. I followed the instructions of the ritual, and as soon as I had said the last word, I heard a voice. The voice thundered, "There's oil on your land." Now I finally knew that all my years of struggling to keep the sagebrush-covered land was for a specific reason. I contacted an oil company, and after receiving the geological reports, the company agreed to sink in a test well last week. The well came in. I am rich. I just received a check for $50,000, and that's just the beginning. I'll receive money from every barrel of oil produced from that well. Alex R. concluded his letter by saying that he only wished he had heard of psychic telemetry years before. He was grateful that his intuition influenced him to keep his 40 acres. He could have been a millionaire years before if he had only known how to unlock his subconscious mind. You can do what Alex did and far more. Alex's story is unique only because oil was discovered on his land. Hundreds of thousands of people every day receive the same instinctive urgings as those that alerted Alex to the good fortune at his fingertips. Unfortunately, few people heed their hunches as Alex did. Even fewer know how to use the pillar of power to unlock the subconscious mind. This is the essential ingredient needed to perform miracles and to get rich quick. This is the ingredient that has been missed by modern mystics. Instinct is only one of the many aspects of psychic telemetry power. Imagine what you will be able to do when you have learned deeper and greater secrets of psychic telemetry. Remember, Alex only held one secret of psychic telemetry power, yet he worked himself a miracle. I'm not exaggerating when I say the sky's the limit. You'll be able to alter any situation to suit yourself. You'll be an instant miracle worker. The subconscious mind is the cosmic mind. I do not want to become overly technical about how psychic telemetry works. Psychic telemetry works just as efficiently for the person who knows nothing of its cosmic mechanics as for the person who is expert in the technical aspects of this awe-inspiring power. Spiritually, man can never be separated from the spirit which caused his creation. The vital link that keeps man in tune with the infinite is the subconscious mind. It is the subconscious mind that is, in reality, the great cosmic mind. It knows all, and it tells all. It tells all to you as you unlock its mighty secrets through the ritual of the first pillar of power. How your cosmic mind speaks to you. In later chapters, you will learn that everything within the universe emits a vibration. You will learn how to use these vibrations to remove an evil spell, bring good luck. It is these vibrations which speak to your cosmic mind. Each person possesses 5 psychic senses that are exact etheric duplicates of your 5 physical senses. It is these psychic senses that are aware of the vibrations that remain visible to us. These etheric senses are stimulated by the unseen vibrations, and the information is transmitted to your subconscious mind, where it is stored, until called upon by the first pillar of power ritual to reveal its secrets to your conscious mind. The expressions of the subconscious cause you to hear voices and sounds, to see clairvoyant pictures, and to feel, taste, and smell. These sensory experiences are expressions of the sensory, audio, and visual telemetry that you will be learning. Once you've discovered the secret, it's very simple. This psychic power is not determined by age, sex, or religion. Many people mistakenly believe that this awesome psychic power may in some way be governed by a person's sex, religion, or age. Nothing could be further from the truth. Instinct is given at birth to both male and female. This instinctive power is then carried within for the remainder of their life. Any religion that they might become involved in as they grow older has no influence upon their psychic power. The age at which a person discovers the secret of opening the subconscious mind does not diminish or increase its power. No one is ever too old to perform miracles, nor are they too young. The particular sex of an individual does not determine the extent of their psychic power. Society recognizes woman's intuition and would infer that intuition is the sole property of woman, but this is not the case. Men, through habit, do not refer to man's intuition, but rather to hunches or intuition. It makes no difference what word you use. They all mean the same thing, instinct. In writing this, I use the word man's quite frequently, but my usage of the word does not mean a man. It is used to denote mankind as a race of beings, which includes both men and women. How Alan F. won $800 at the crap table after using the Pillar of Power magic ritual. Alan F. was the assistant pastor at a small and struggling church that faced eviction from its rented quarters. Things looked hopeless. It was Friday and $800 was needed by Monday morning. Alan had never been inside of a gambling casino and knew nothing about roulette, craps, or blackjack. He knew nothing about gambling and had never been exposed to it, even in conversation. I had known Alan for many years, and I was quite surprised when I received his telephone call. "Bob, I've got this crazy urge to go gambling in Reno. Will you go with me?" "Sure," I replied. Our party left the next morning. It was clear to me that Alan's instinct was trying to talk to him, and I wanted to witness the results. When we arrived at Reno, it was obvious that Alan really didn't know anything about gambling. He had taken only $20. On this $20, he expected to eat 3 meals and still have plenty of money with which to gamble. Alan was very surprised when in less than 5 minutes of gambling he had lost 19 of his $20. He looked dejected as he walked up to me. "I only have $1 left. I was sure that I was going to win the $800 that the church needed. Do you have a copy of that ritual for the Pillar of Power?" I handed him a copy, and he stood reading it for a few moments. As Alan handed me back the pamphlet, I noticed that his eyes looked almost trance-like. Alan silently turned, and it seemed as if he glided across the floor to a craps table. He had never been before to a craps table, and he certainly did not know how to play the game. I followed closely behind Alan and watched him intently. Without asking for instructions, Alan placed his lone silver dollar on the pass line. Alan threw the dice time after time, 7 after 7. The table was mobbed with other players trying to get a piece of the action. The casino changed dice over and over again. There was no explanation for Alan's hot streak with the dice. "One more roll," Alan turned and said to me. Alan counted his money as he walked from the table. He had won exactly $800. The $800 needed to pay back the rent on his floundering church. As we were driving away from Reno, I asked Alan where he had learned to shoot craps. "I don't know how to play," he replied. "If you don't know how to play, how could you stand there yelling $1 on the hard way 8, or I'll take the odds on the number 6? "Did I do that?" he asked. Alan's innocence brought a roar of laughter from our party as we leisurely headed home. Alan's church held a Thanksgiving service on Monday evening, and I attended. Alan and I dropped our heads and smiled as Pastor Bartlett told his congregation, God answers our prayers in strange and mysterious ways. The second great pillar of power is yours to command. The second great pillar of power is all that remains between you and the secrets of the universe, and this secret power is now going to be revealed to you. The first pillar of power taught you how to use the inner instructive power that you possess. The second pillar of power will teach you how to use the outer forces that will draw even more miraculous powers to do your every will. The genius of long-gone souls is at your fingertips. There have been genuine instances where individuals have communed with the spirits of the dead, but there are limitations as to the help that these spirits can give. The mind within these spiritual beings is the same mind that they possessed on earth, and their knowledge is limited. A lady with whom I was acquainted was communicating with her dead husband, who was giving her advice on financial investments. The lady lost everything. The last person she would have been asking advice from was her dead husband. While alive on earth, John had gone through a literal fortune making bad investments, and his knowledge of wise money management did not increase with death, as the advice his wife later proved. Psychic telemetry does not allow you to make these same errors. It teaches you to tap the universal mind, which is the source of infallible good judgment. The universal mind retains all knowledge of the past and present. It knows the course of future events as the thoughts and knowledge of long-gone earthly geniuses smolder within the universal memory. It is the accumulated knowledge of those souls from the past that will give you the power to become an instant miracle worker. There is no need to communicate with very fallible individual spirit when you can rely upon the entire accumulated knowledge from human history, and this can be easily done by creating your own materialized thought form or guardian genie. How to create your own guardian genie. You have no need of an individual spirit guide, but you do need to create a thought form which resembles the human form. This guardian genie which you mentally create will be a willing slave ready to serve you for any purpose at any time or any place. Where to begin? Sit quietly with paper and pencil, jotting down each miracle you desire upon a separate page of paper. On these pages of paper, write a name. These will be the names of the guardian genie that you are about to create. Also on these pieces of paper, write the physical characteristics that you want your guardian genie to possess. Black hair, blue eyes, tall, short, thin, or stout. Now, also list those abilities that each of your guardian genii will possess. Wisdom, power over others, humor, financial guidance, or healing power. I remember very clearly the first guardian genie that I created. I was in junior high school, having difficulty with some of my studies. As I sat at my desk brooding, I decided to call upon the genius power of the creative cosmic mind to help me with my schoolwork. I took out a piece of paper and listed my requirements in a manner such as this. My guardian genie for schoolwork. Name Benny. What does he look like? Benny is a teenager with black hair and blue eyes. He is tall, thin, and knows the answers to all my school problems. As I grew older and matured, I created more and more guardian genies, each with a separate job to do. I created a thought form spirit to give me advice on money, health, and love. They gave me all these things, and your spirit geniuses will do the same for you. The Guardian Genie Creation Ritual. After you've completed the creation of your spirit genius on paper, it is time to mold the thought force into a reality. Sit quietly, holding one sheet of paper before you at a time. Invoke the power. I am now in tune with the infinite source of all knowledge and wisdom. This great universal mind will now identify itself to me in the form of a guardian genie, whose name will be, give them a name. This will appear in this form and read aloud the physical characteristics of your spirit genius. He or she will possess all knowledge needed to bring your wish into my life. Sit back and relax with eyes closed, visualizing the spirit genius you have just created. Follow this same ritual for every guardian genie you wish to create. They never fail you. How to use guardian genie to fulfill every command. Your guardian genii are powerful forces that stand ready to fulfill your every command. You've created a genie to work miracles for you in health, wealth, happiness, etc. The more that you use these genii, the more powerful they become. Your magic genie should be called upon to work each time that you perform your second pillar of power ritual. When you perform this ritual, call your genie to you by name. Give him or her your command. you can be confident that they will work a miracle. It would be repetitious if I were to remind you in each chapter of this book to call upon your genie each time you perform your second pillar of power ritual. So from this moment on, remember to call upon your appropriate guardian genie each time you perform your second pillar of power ritual. Lorraine T. was a happy woman, but had very little in the way of material luxuries. She could never acquire enough money to buy a home or property. She held on to her dream, but had accepted her fate as an eternal apartment dweller. It seemed a coincidence that the day after she read about a big land swindle in the daily newspaper, she received an advertisement from the same land development company that was under investigation. The company was accused of selling land that did not have water on it. Natural curiosity led Lorraine to read the brochure. Rather than being repelled by the advertisement, Lorraine became intrigued. Her instinct was telling her to buy an acre of the worthless land she later confided to her friends. A heated battle between Lorraine's common sense and her instinct was taking place as she stood at the cashier's window, withdrawing the last dollar from her meager savings. The deed to Lorraine's desert property was duly received. She opened the airmail envelope and stared at the worthless piece of paper. "What have I done?" she cried, sinking into a deep state of mental depression. Lorraine swore she would never reveal her stupidity to a soul. Several weeks had passed before another coincidence occurred. While riding the bus home from work, Lorraine dropped a coin between the seat cushions. While reaching for the coin, she felt a piece of paper. After pulling up the wadded paper from the seat, she noticed that it was a small pamphlet entitled "How to Create a Guardian Genie." With nothing better to do, Lorraine glanced through the paragraph as she completed her bus ride home. Lorraine was full of doubts as she performed the Guardian Genie creation ritual. And as she later said, "I was scared to death when I saw a form actually appear before me." But her fear was short-lived. The well driller did everything in his power to discourage Lorraine from wasting her money by having him drill for water. The geologist said, "There isn't any water here," he said. Armed with borrowed money and the guidance of her guardian genius, Lorraine walked onto her desert land and pointed to the spot where she wanted the well dug. The pipe was only drilled 24 feet when water was discovered. A miracle. No, just a wise and all-knowing guardian genius. As you read further into psychic telemetry, you will discover that experiences such as this are common, everyday occurrences. Incidentally, Lorraine later sold her worthless desert property for enough money to purchase her dream home in Southern California, and she was able to pay cash for her dream home. Rituals of the second pillar of power. You have now given names to the guardian genie, which you've created. These names and a quiet place to relax are all that is needed to invoke this next powerful ritual. Sit quietly upon a comfortable chair in a dimly lit room, feet flat upon the floor, hands resting with palms up on your knees. You are now ready to invoke the ritual of the second pillar of power. With eyes closed, visualize your first pillar of power on your right. Then, with as much energy as possible, visualize your second pillar of power in front of you, slightly to the left. When these two pillars of light are burning strongly, repeat the following words. I now command that the genius mind which lies within the universal intelligence draw close to me. Now as I summon my guardian genie. Give the name of your guardian genie. Will now appear to me. Within seconds, the spirit genius will appear, standing directly in front of you between the two pillars of power. Make your desires known to the genie and remain relaxed until he or she returns to tell you the information desired or has completed the task assigned. The ritual is completed when you repeat, "The great cosmic mind has heard and answered my request. I give thanks for my genie and for my miracle." Psychic telemetry always helps. It never harms. These pillars of power rituals show how psychic telemetry can work quietly and gently to change your life for the better. Yet these powers are harmless to the user. Whenever magic or miracles is heard, many people think of evil, demons, devils, or evil spirits. Evil power is only a reflection of the confused attitudes of the Middle Ages. None of these ingredients is needed or used in psychic telemetry. Now at this point, I've just read the introduction and the first chapter. I do want to just give some other rituals that are given in the book that you can use perhaps to help you out. For instance, there is an explanation of how to perform your enchantment ritual. Ferguson explains all of your enchantment rituals are slight variations from the ritual of the pillars of power. As you begin your enchantment ritual, know exactly what it is that you want to accomplish. There can't be any "I think I want such and such." Be specific. There is no room for generalizations as you perform your magical and powerful enchantments. Sit In your dimly lit room, with your spine erect and hands resting upon your knees, palms up, visualize your first pillar of power on your right and declare, "The first pillar, which is the power of my instinct, will now vibrate with energy as I command it to fulfill the enchantment that I now repeat." Repeat the enchantment that will fulfill your desire. Remain seated, visualizing your second pillar of power on the left. When the pillar is strong and bright, repeat these magical words. "The second pillar, which is the genius intellect of the great cosmic mind, now hears and obeys my command. My guardian genie will now respond to my enchantment and bring it into reality." Repeat the same enchantment used after the first pillar of the power ritual. Now you can relax and wait. Your miracle is on its way. The exact ritual should be performed for each enchantment that you desire to exercise. Here is an enchantment for personal recognition. The strengthened pillars of power now respond and know that I require personal recognition for all my talents and abilities. I command that those people holding places of power and authority will now recognize all of my diligent efforts. The cosmic powers now ordain that my wishes shall be fulfilled. The pillars of power will now, this very instant, have dominion over all the forces that would keep me from my goal. I am the ruler of my destiny, and have declared that personal recognition is now mine forevermore. There is also an enchantment for health. I bask in the sunlit energy of my pillars of power. The great rays of healing power now enfold me. They pulsate within every nerve and cell of my body, cleansing and soothing and healing. I now command that all sickness and disease be banished from my mind and body. My perfect spirit has now made me whole. Here is an enchantment to make yourself desirable. I now declare that the pillars of power have made me attractive and desirable. My guardian genie will now guide me to the perfect partner for me. He or she will be blind to my shortcomings, whether they be physical or mental. My perfect partner will fulfill my every need and my desire, and so it is. There's also the general enchantment for prosperity. My guardian genie hears me now. Everything and everybody prospers me now. Additionally, there is an enchantment to increase self-esteem. I am confident and secure in each thing that I do and say. My every action demonstrates my attunement with the great cosmic mind. I reflect this divine intelligence in every thought, word, and deed. There's also the enchantment for protection from evil. I am now in attunement with the pure rays of power that come to me from the great cosmic mind. My guardian genie stands ready to protect me from every curse or evil influence. I am surrounded with divine protection, and no evil can penetrate my shield of power. Those who would send me evil are powerless, and their evil shall return to them 100-fold. Now that is just a few of these enchantments, and there's a variety of other rituals and enchantments that are included in later chapters of the book. The book covers a whole variety of interesting topics, including sign language from the cosmic mind, visual telemetry will give you the magnetic King Midas golden glaze, how to command and control others with the magic teleaura telescope, telepsychometry divining miracle power from inanimate objects. I will consider returning to some of these chapters if you guys find this episode interesting and would like to have more. But I am always fascinated when you get a really scholarly, wonderful writer that writes in these realms that he might have been discredited for, and he went out of his way to make sure that nobody knew that he was writing these other books. You can see a separation when you follow his history. There's some interesting stories about Robert A. Ferguson. There's one where he's speaking to a spiritual conference, and in a picture, they believe they could see his brother's ghost form. That is what I found, but I am interested in his other books, and I'd like to explore and share a little bit more of Robert Ferguson's teachings because I found them to be consistent with what we've talked about so far. Many times we're talking about the same thing, using different language. Obviously, we're talking about the one source, the one power that is in all that you can utilize, and everybody comes at it from a different way. There is no one way to do it. And so I like to gather the different ways that people like to tune into this power and even share with you the things that they call those powers. Because as we learn about these different techniques, we see that it's all the same technique. But there is a certain inspiration and confidence, motivation that comes with these words, to hear the stories of other people that have been successful in using these powers. There are so many examples of people using these powers, and there's so much more than you're aware of. that when you hear someone say, yeah, that stuff doesn't really work, they are so very wrong. There are so many stories from this channel, from people that follow this channel, from myself and others, and from books like this that share about the amazing miracles that can happen when you apply the great universal powers of the cosmic mind. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com, and welcome to The Reality Revolution.